The morning sun cast long shadows across the metal walkways of Kepler Station. High above the planet's surface, the Galactic Defense Academy floated in perfect orbit. Inside the massive structure, thousands of young beings from across the galaxy, prepared for another day of training. Li Tae-min walked through the corridors with quiet steps. His human boots made soft sounds on the metal floor, unlike the clicking claws and heavy footsteps of his alien classmates. At 19 years old, he stood average height for a human, but short compared to most other species at the academy. His black hair was cut short in military style, and his dark eyes took in everything around him. The academy was huge. Corridors, stretched in all directions, filled with students from hundreds of different worlds. Some had scales that shimmered in the artificial light. Others had fur in colors that did not exist on Earth. A few floated instead of walking, their bodies, designed for life in zero gravity. Tae-min had grown used to being different, but he still felt the stares when he passed. He entered the Advanced Combat Theory classroom and found his usual seat near the back. The room was designed to fit many different body types. Some seats were for creatures with tails. Others were for beings that needed to hang upside down. The human seats were simple chairs, nothing special. Park Ji-woo was already there, saving the seat next to him. Ji-woo was Tae-min's closest friend at the academy, another human from Earth. They had arrived on the same transport ship 6 months ago. Ji-woo was shorter than Tae-min but had quick reflexes that impressed even the alien instructors. "You're late again," Ji-woo whispered as Tae-min sat down. "I stopped to help Kim So-ra with her equipment," Tae-min replied quietly. "Her breathing mask was acting up." Ji-woo nodded. So-ra was one of the 10 other humans at the academy. She was studying to be a pilot, one of the few fields where humans were considered naturally gifted. The aliens respected human pilots because humans could handle multiple tasks at once and stay calm under pressure. The classroom filled up quickly. Most students were much larger than the humans. The Corvin students took up an entire section with their thick, armored bodies. Their skin looked like gray stone, and their faces had no expressions that humans could read. The Vrek students sat in another area, their insect-like bodies fitting into special seats. Their compound eyes never seemed to blink, and their mandibles clicked when they talked. Commander Thixtal entered the room with heavy steps. He was a Vrex, standing nearly 8 feet tall. His exoskeleton was dark green with scars from old battles. 4 arms moved independently as he set up his teaching materials. His compound eyes could see the entire room at once, missing nothing. "Today we study proper engagement protocols," the commander announced. His voice came through a translator device, turning his clicking sounds into words the students could understand. "In real combat, you must know when to fight and when to retreat. Some species," his eyes seemed to focus on the human section, "are better suited for support roles." Tae-min felt the familiar sting of the comment but kept his face calm. This was not the first time Commander Thixtal had suggested humans were too weak for frontline combat. The instructor believed humans belonged in medical units or as technicians, not as warriors. A large Corvin student raised one of his thick arms. This was Vashator, one of the biggest students in the class. His people came from a high-gravity world where only the strong survived. "Commander, why do we train with the soft bodies? They will just slow us down in real battles." Several alien students made sounds that might have been laughter. The Corvins had a reputation for being direct and rude. They saw politeness as weakness and believed only physical strength mattered. "The humans are here because their government insists," Commander Thixtal replied. "We must work with all Alliance members, even the less capable ones." Tae-min's hands tightened into fists under his desk. Beside him, Ji-woo stayed very still. They had learned that showing anger only made things worse. The other humans in the class looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Commander Thixtal began his lesson about combat formations. He showed videos of famous battles and explained how different species work together. But every example showed humans in the background, far from the actual fighting. The message was clear. Humans were useful, but they were not warriors. During the lesson, Tai-Min noticed 3 Corvan students whispering among themselves. Vashator was there, along with his friends Krelnak and Zefex. All 3 were in their final year at the academy and would graduate soon. They often picked on younger students, especially humans. Krelnak was smaller than Vashator, but meaner. His gray skin had darker patches that showed his bad temper. Zefex was the smartest of the 3, always finding new ways to cause trouble, without getting caught by the instructors. The 3 Corvans kept looking at the human students and making quiet clicking sounds. Tai-Min could not understand their language, but their body movements seemed aggressive. Ji-Woo noticed too and shifted, in his seat. "They're planning something," Ji-Woo whispered very quietly. "I know," Tai-Min replied. "Just stay calm." The lesson continued with Commander Thixtal explaining why different species had different roles in combat. He talked about how the Vreks were good at tactical planning because of their compound eyes and quick thinking. The Corvans were natural heavy assault troops because of their thick skin and strong bodies. The floating Zephyrians were perfect scouts because they could move in 3 dimensions. "And humans?" a student asked. "Humans are good at following orders," the commander said after a pause. "They can learn many different skills, which makes them useful support personnel." More clicking sounds came from the alien students. Tai-Min knew they were laughing at humans again. He had heard it all before. Humans were soft. Humans were weak. Humans were only good for simple jobs that did not require real strength or courage. But Tai-Min remembered his history lessons from Earth. He remembered reading about human warriors who had fought impossible battles and won through determination and clever thinking. He remembered stories of humans who refused to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. Those stories were not taught at the academy. The class ended with assignments for next week. Students began filing out of the room, their various feet, claws and tentacles making different sounds on the floor. The humans waited until most others had left, as they had learned to do. It was easier to avoid trouble that way. As they gathered their materials, Vashator and his friends walked past the human section. The big Corvan accidentally bumped into Tai-Min's desk, knocking his books to the floor. "Sorry, soft body," Vashator said in a voice that was not sorry at all. "Did not see you there. You are so small." His friends made clicking sounds that were definitely laughter. Other alien students stopped to watch, expecting the human to back down like always. Tai-Min looked up at the Corvan, who was twice his size and weight. For a moment, something flickered in his dark eyes, something that made Vashator pause. But then Tai-Min bent down to pick up his books without saying anything. "Smart choice, little human," Vashator said before walking away with his friends. Ji-Woo helped gather the scattered papers. "One day," he whispered, "they're going to push too far." Tai-Min said nothing, but his friend was right. The tension was growing every day, and something would have to give soon. 3 days after the classroom incident, Tai-Min found himself in the zero-gravity combat simulation chamber. The room was a perfect sphere, 30 meters across, with walls that could become solid or allow passage depending on the training program. Today's exercise was about fighting in space, where there was no up or down. The human students floated in their section, checking their equipment one final time. Each cadet wore a special suit that provided air and protection while allowing full movement. Small thrusters on the arms and legs helped with direction changes in the weightless environment. Kim So-Ra floated next to Tai-Min, adjusting her breathing mask. She was 20 years old, with long black hair tied back in a practical ponytail. Her dream was to pilot the big ships that traveled between star systems. She was the best pilot trainee in her class, human or alien. "My mask feels loose," she said, concern in her voice. The seal around my face does not feel right. Taemin moved closer to look. The breathing apparatus was crucial in space training. Without it working perfectly, a cadet could pass out from lack of oxygen. "It looks okay from here," he said. "But tell the instructor if you feel any problems." Instructor Veltar was a Zephyrian, a species that naturally lived in zero gravity. His body was long and thin, with multiple arms that could grip surfaces in any direction. He floated in the center of the chamber, easily controlling his position with tiny movements. "Today we practice boarding actions," Veltar announced through the communication system. "Half of you will defend a space station. The other half will try to capture it. The defending team starts in the mock station at the far end. The attacking team begins here." The students were divided into two groups. Most of the larger alien students were put on the attacking side, including Vashitor and his two friends. The humans and some smaller aliens were assigned to defend the station. Taemin did not like the setup. The attacking team had all the advantages in size and strength. But orders were orders, and he moved with his team toward the defensive position. The mock station was a complex structure of rooms and corridors built into one wall of the chamber. It had multiple levels connected by tubes that simulated the inside of a real space station. The defending team had to prevent the attackers from reaching the central control room. "Remember," Instructor Veltar said, "this is training. No permanent damage to other cadets. The suits will record hits and determine when someone is eliminated from the exercise." Sora took her position near the main entrance. Her job was to spot attackers and warn the rest of the team. Taemin and Ji-woo moved to a corridor that led to the control room. Other cadets spread out through the station. The exercise began with a loud signal. Through the transparent walls of the chamber, Taemin could see the attacking team pushing off from the starting position. They moved through space in a coordinated formation, using their thrusters to control direction. Vashitor led the attack, his heavy body moving surprisingly well in zero gravity. The Corvins were natural fighters, and their thick skin provided extra protection even beyond their training suits. Behind him, other aliens followed in a disciplined line. "Here they come." Sora's voice crackled through the communication system. 8 attackers heading for the main entrance, 3 more going around to the side. Taemin positioned himself at a corner where he could see down the corridor. In zero gravity, attackers could come from any direction, including what would normally be the ceiling or floor. He had to watch everywhere at once. The first attackers entered the station with smooth movements. They had trained for this kind of combat and knew how to use the walls and ceiling to their advantage. Taemin waited until one alien student floated into range, then activated his practice weapon. A beam of light shot out and hit the target, marking them as eliminated. "Good shot," Ji-woo called from across the corridor, but the real attackers were still coming. Vashitor and his friends had gone around to a different entrance, avoiding the main defenses. They moved through the station's back passages, heading straight for the control room. Taemin heard Sora's voice on the communication system again, but something was wrong. Her words were slurred, and she sounded like she was having trouble breathing. "My mask," she gasped. "Something's wrong with my breathing mask." Through his position, Taemin could see Sora floating near her guard post. She was pulling at her breathing apparatus with both hands. Her face was turning pale, and she looked like she might pass out. Without thinking, Taemin abandoned his position and pushed off toward her. In zero gravity, he had to be careful with his movements, or he would overshoot and crash into the wall. He used small bursts from his thrusters to control his path. "Sora, stay calm," he called through the communication system. "I'm coming to help." When he reached her, Taemin could see the problem immediately. The seal around her breathing mask had been damaged. Air was leaking out and the mask was not providing enough oxygen. She was starting to panic, which made the problem worse. "Hold still," Taemin said, grabbing onto a handheld near her position. "I need to fix the seal." He pulled an emergency repair kit from his belt and began working on the damaged seal. The repair was not difficult, but it took time and concentration. While he worked, he could hear the sounds of combat continuing throughout the station. "Tae-min!" Ji-woo's voice came through the communication system. "Where are you? The attackers are getting close to the control room." "Helping Sora," Tae-min replied while continuing to work on the breathing mask. "Her equipment failed." From the other end of the communication system came a sound that might have been laughter. It was the clicking noise that Corvins made when they found something funny. "Equipment failure?" Vashator's voice came through the system. He was not supposed to be using the general communication channel during the exercise. How clumsy of the little human. Maybe she should be more careful with her gear. Taemin's hands stopped working for a moment. Something about the way Vashator spoke suggested this was not an accident. The big Corvin sounded too pleased about Sora's problems. "There," Tae-min said as he finished the repair. "Your mask should work fine now." Sora took several deep breaths, and her color began to return to normal. "Thank you," she said. "I don't know what happened. The mask was working fine when we started." Tae-min looked at the damaged seal more closely. The material had not just broken from use. It looked like something had deliberately weakened it, causing it to fail during the exercise. Someone had sabotaged Sora's equipment. The exercise ended a few minutes later when the attacking team reached the control room. The defending team had lost too many members to stop them. As everyone gathered back in the main chamber, Instructor Veltar reviewed their performance. "The attacking team showed good coordination," he said. "The defending team fought well but lost focus when one member had equipment problems. Vashator and his friends floated together, looking very pleased. With themselves, they had won the exercise and caused problems for the humans at the same time. Other alien students seemed to think this was normal and expected." After the instructor dismissed the class, Tae-min examined Sora's breathing mask more carefully. The damage was definitely not accidental. Someone had used a small tool to weaken the seal, knowing it would fail during the exercise. "This was sabotage," he told Ji-woo quietly. "Can you prove it?" his friend asked. Tae-min looked around the chamber. There were no recording devices that would show what happened before the exercise. No way to prove that someone had deliberately damaged the equipment. It would be his word against the aliens, and nobody would believe a human over a Corvin. "We need to report this," Sora said when they told her what they had found, but Tae-min knew it would be useless. The Academy administration always found ways to dismiss human complaints. They would say it was an accident, or that humans were too paranoid, or that the evidence was not clear enough. As they left the training chamber, Vashator walked past them with his friends. The big Corvin looked at Sora with what might have been amusement. "Be more careful with your equipment, Softbody," he said. "Space is dangerous for creatures who cannot take care of themselves." Tae-min felt anger rising in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting into a fight would only make things worse for all the humans at the Academy. But the Corvins were getting bolder, and their pranks were becoming more dangerous. That night, as he lay in his small quarters, Tae-min thought about what would happen next. The aliens seemed to think humans would never fight back, no matter what they did. They saw human restraint as weakness and human politeness as fear. Maybe it was time to show them they were wrong. Hand-to-hand combat class was held in the Academy's largest training hall. The room had a high ceiling and soft mats covering the floor to prevent serious injuries during practice fights. Weapons were not allowed in this class. Students learned to fight using only their natural abilities and whatever they could grab from their environment. Tae-min walked into the hall with the other students, knowing this would not be a good day. Commander Thixtal was teaching the class, and the big Vrex instructor had made it clear he did not think much of human fighting ability. Today's lesson was about close combat between different species. The human students gathered in their usual corner while the aliens spread out across the rest of the hall. Tae-min counted 12 humans total, including himself. They were vastly outnumbered by the 300 alien students, but that was normal at the academy. Yoon Da-eun sat on a bench near the wall, her personal recording device in her lap. She was studying engineering rather than combat, but all students had to take basic fighting classes. Da-eun was small even for a human, with short black hair and quick, intelligent eyes. She often recorded classes to study the technical aspects of different fighting styles. Today we will demonstrate the advantages of natural armor and strength, Commander Thixtal announced to the class. His forearms gestured toward different groups of students. Some species evolved for combat. Others evolved for different purposes. The instructor's compound eyes focused on the human section. Humans, for example, evolved on a relatively peaceful world. They did not need thick skin or natural weapons. This makes them poor choices for frontline combat roles. Taemin felt the familiar sting of the insult but kept his expression neutral. Around the hall, alien students made their various sounds of agreement. They had heard this lecture many times before. To demonstrate these differences, the commander continued, we will have some practice matches between species. This will show you why proper role assignment is crucial in military operations. Several alien students volunteered to participate in the demonstrations. The commander chose pairs that would clearly show the physical advantages of certain species. A heavily armored Corvin faced a lightly built Zephyrian, a Vrex with sharp claws sparred with a round, peaceful Gorlan. Each match ended quickly with the physically stronger species winning easily. The lessons were clear. Big creatures beat small creatures, armored species beat unarmored ones, and species with natural weapons beat those without. Now, Commander Thixtal said, looking directly at Taemin, let us see how humans perform against a properly evolved warrior species. Cadet Taemin, please step forward. Taemin's heart sank, but he could not refuse a direct order from an instructor. He walked to the center of the mat, while the other students formed a circle around the fighting area. Their various eyes, all different shapes and colors, focused on him with interest. Your opponent will be Cadet Vashator, the commander announced. The big Corvin stepped forward with what might have been a smile on his stone-like face. Vashator was nearly twice Taemin's weight and covered in thick gray skin that could stop most attacks. His hands ended in short but sharp claws, and his people were naturally strong from living on a high-gravity world. This is for educational purposes only, Commander Thixtal said, but his tone suggested he was looking forward to the demonstration. The match will end when one fighter yields or cannot continue. Taemin took his position across from Vashtor and tried to think of a strategy. The Corvin had every physical advantage, but humans were supposed to be smarter and more flexible. Maybe he could use speed and tactics to even the odds. The commander signaled the start of the match, and Vashator immediately charged forward. His heavy feet pounded on the mat as he tried to grab Taemin with his thick arms. Taemin dodged to the side, using his smaller size to avoid the attack. Run, little human, Vashator said in his deep voice. Show everyone how your species fights. The alien students made their laughing sounds. They were enjoying the spectacle of a small human trying to avoid a much larger opponent. Even some of the instructors had gathered to watch the demonstration. Taemin circled around Vashator, looking for an opening. He tried a quick strike at the Corvin's side, but his fist bounced off the thick skin without causing any damage. It was like hitting a stone wall. Vashator swung one of his heavy arms in a backhand. Strike. Taemin barely got out of the way, feeling the wind from the blow as it passed close to his face. If that hit had connected, it would have knocked him unconscious. Stop running and fight, Vashator growled, advancing again. Taemin tried to use his training, looking for weak points in the Corvin's defenses. He aimed a kick at Vashator's knee, hoping to damage the joint, but the alien's leg was too thick and strong. The kick had no effect except to make Vashator angry. The big Corvin lunged forward and managed to grab Taemin's arm. His grip was like a steel clamp, and Taemin could feel the bones in his arm grinding together under the pressure. Vashator lifted him off his feet and threw him across the mat. Taemin hit the ground hard and rolled to absorb the impact. Pain shot through his shoulder where he had landed, but nothing felt broken. He got back to his feet quickly, knowing that staying down would be worse. The alien students were cheering for Vashator now, excited by the display of superior strength. Their various voices created a noise that filled the training hall. Some were calling for the Corvin to finish the fight quickly. Da'un was still recording from her position on the bench, her face pale with worry. The other human students watched with expressions of fear and anger, knowing they could not interfere without making things worse. Vashator advanced again, more confident now. He had proven he was stronger and tougher than the human. Now he wanted to demonstrate complete dominance. He grabbed Taemin again, this time getting a grip on both arms. "See how weak they are?" Vashator called to the other students while holding Taemin helpless. This is why humans should not be warriors. Commander Thixtal made no move to stop the demonstration, even though it was clear the human was overmatched. The instructor seemed to be enjoying the lesson about human limitations. Vashator lifted Taemin into the air and threw him down onto the mat. This time, the impact drove the air from Taemin's lungs, and he struggled to breathe. The Corvin stood over him, looking down, with satisfaction. "Yield, soft body," Vashator demanded. "Admit that humans are too weak for real combat." Taemin tried to get up, but the Corvin placed one heavy foot on his chest, pinning him to the mat. The weight was enormous, and breathing became even more difficult. Around the circle, alien students continued their cheering. "Yield," Vashator repeated, pressing down harder. Taemin looked up at the alien towering over him. He could yield and end the humiliation, proving once again that humans were weak. Or he could continue fighting and probably get seriously hurt. Either way, the aliens would see what they expected to see. But then Vashator made a mistake. Instead of accepting a yield or ending the demonstration, he decided to make the lesson more memorable. He knelt down and grabbed Taemin by the throat, his clawed fingers wrapping around the human's neck. "Maybe you need a stronger lesson," the Corvin said, beginning to squeeze. Commander Thixtal finally spoke up, but his voice was casual and unhurried. "That's sufficient demonstration, Cadet Vashator. The point has been made." But Vashator was enjoying himself too much to stop. His grip tightened on Taemin's throat, and the human's vision began to darken around the edges. The Corvin's friends, Krelnak and Zephax, moved closer to watch. "Let him breathe, Vashator," someone called from the crowd, but the Corvin ignored the voice. Taemin clawed at the thick fingers around his neck, but they might as well have been made of stone. His strength was fading as oxygen stopped reaching. His brain. The sounds of the crowd became distant and muffled. In that moment of growing darkness, something changed in Taemin's mind. A switch flipped that had nothing to do with academy training or civilized behavior. Deep in his brain, ancient programming activated. The same instincts that had helped his ancestors survive on a dangerous world began to wake up. Krelnak grabbed Taemin's left arm, pinning it to the mat. "Hold still, human," he said. "Accept your lesson." Zephax moved to grab Taemin's legs, wanting to be part of the demonstration. "Show them how weak humans really are," he encouraged his friend. "Commander." Thixtal turned away to lecture the watching students about knowing one's limitations in combat. He assumed the demonstration was over and the human was finished. But something was happening to Taemin that none of the aliens understood. As his vision darkened and his breathing stopped, his body's emergency systems activated. Adrenaline flooded, his bloodstream in quantities that would kill most civilized species. His heart rate doubled, then tripled. Most importantly, the psychological limiters that kept humans from seriously hurting each other began to shut down. Taemin stopped thinking like a cadet following academy rules. He started thinking like a predator whose life was in immediate danger. The change happened in seconds, but to the aliens holding him down, it felt instant. One moment they were restraining a weak, helpless human. The next moment, they were trying to control something that no longer cared about being civilized. Vashator's mistake was thinking he understood what he was dealing with. In his mind, humans were soft creatures from an easy world, bred for peaceful tasks and simple work. They had no natural weapons, no thick skin, no real strength. They were prey animals trying to play at being predators. The big Corvan had grown up on a world where only the strong survived. His people had evolved thick skin and powerful muscles because their planet was harsh and unforgiving. They respected strength and despised weakness. To Vashator, humans represented everything his species had left behind when they became civilized. "Feel how weak you are," Vashator whispered as he tightened his grip on Taimin's throat. "This is why your kind should never have been allowed into the academy." Around them, the other alien students watched with interest. Some looked uncomfortable with how far the demonstration had gone, but none spoke up to stop it. This was how things worked at the academy. The strong showed the weak their place, and everyone learned from the lesson. Krelnak held Taimin's left arm firmly against the mat. He was smaller than Vashator, but still much larger than any human. His grip was like steel, and he had no doubt that the soft human could never break free. "Look at him struggle," Krelnak said with amusement. "Like a small animal caught by a predator." Zephyx finished grabbing Taimin's legs, completing the restraint. He was the smartest of the three Corvans and took pride in finding efficient ways to dominate their victims. With three of them controlling the human, there was no chance of escape. "Now he understands," Zephyx said with satisfaction. "Humans are not warriors. They are support personnel at best." Commander Thickstal had turned away from the demonstration, confident that the lesson was complete. He began lecturing the watching students about the importance of knowing one's limitations in combat situations. "Each species has natural advantages and disadvantages," the instructor said to the crowd. "Recognizing these differences is crucial for effective military organization. Some are born to fight, others to serve in support roles." The alien students listened with attention, many taking notes about the lesson they were witnessing. The human students stood frozen in their section, unable to help their friend without making the situation worse for everyone. Yun continued recording from her bench, her hands shaking as she held the device. She knew this had gone far beyond a training demonstration, but there was nothing she could do to stop it. Any interference would be seen as humans refusing to accept their proper place. Vashtor enjoyed the feeling of complete control. The human beneath him had stopped struggling and lay still on the mat. His grip on the soft throat was firm, but not quite tight enough to cause permanent damage. He wanted to make the lesson memorable, not create a real incident. "Tell everyone how weak humans are," he demanded, loosening his grip slightly so Taimin could speak. "Admit that your species has no place in combat roles." But Taimin did not speak. His eyes were closed, and his breathing was shallow. To the Corvans, he looked defeated and broken. They assumed he was accepting his humiliation and would yield as soon as he could find his voice. They did not understand what was really happening inside the human's mind and body. Taimin was not broken or defeated. He was changing into something the aliens had never seen before. Human beings had evolved on a world that was far more dangerous than the Corvans realized. Earth was not the peaceful paradise they imagined. It was a planet where massive predators hunted in packs, where natural disasters could strike without warning, where survival meant fighting or dying. Humans had not developed thick skin or natural weapons because they had something better. They had developed minds that could stay calm under extreme pressure and bodies that could perform impossible feats when survival was at stake. Most importantly, they had developed the ability to turn off their civilized behavior when necessary. Bio Academy had taught all the alien students about human anatomy and physiology, but the lessons had focused on human weaknesses: soft skin, Moderate strength, average speed. The instructors had never mentioned the human adrenal system or the fight-or-flight response that could triple a human's physical capabilities. They had certainly never discussed what happened when a human stopped caring about rules and social expectations. Vashator felt the change before he understood it. The human beneath him suddenly felt different. The soft, yielding body became rigid and tense. The weak struggles stopped and were replaced by a stillness that was somehow more threatening. "What?" Vashator began, but he never finished the question. Taimin's eyes snapped open, and Vashator saw something there that made his confidence waver. The human's dark eyes were no longer filled with fear or pain. They were completely calm, focused, and utterly without mercy. In that instant, Vashator realized he had made a serious mistake. He was not holding down a weak prey animal. He was restraining a predator that had decided to stop pretending to be civilized. Taimin's right hand moved faster than the Corvan thought possible. His fingers shot upward and grabbed the breathing apparatus that Vashator wore over his mouth. The device was necessary for Corvans to breathe in the Academy's atmosphere, which had been adjusted for multiple species. The human's grip was nothing like the weak grasp Vashator had expected. It was like being caught in a mechanical vice that tightened with impossible force. Taimin's fingers, which had seemed so soft and useless, now felt like steel cables. "Impossible," Krelnak said, staring at his friend's surprised expression. But it was not impossible. It was simply the result of a human adrenal system operating at maximum capacity. Taimin's muscles were now working with 3 times their normal strength, and his mind was focused on only one goal: survival through the complete destruction of his attackers. Vashator tried to pull away, but Taimin's grip on his breathing apparatus was unbreakable. The human twisted his wrist in a motion that crumpled the metal filter, making it impossible for the Corvan to breathe properly. At the same time, Taimin's other hand found a pressure point on Vashator's thick neck. The Corvans thought their armored skin made them invulnerable, but they were wrong. Every species had weak points, and humans had spent months in xenobiology classes learning exactly where those points were located. Taimin pressed his thumb into the nerve cluster with surgical precision. The Corvan's natural armor meant nothing against an attack that targeted the nervous system directly. Vashator's eyes went wide with shock as pain shot through his entire body. "Let go!" Krelnak demanded, tightening his grip on Taimin's left arm. "Stop this now!" But Taimin was no longer listening to demands or following Academy rules. He was fighting for his life using instincts that went back millions of years. In his current state, anyone who was not helping him was an enemy to be destroyed. Zephex realized something was seriously wrong and tried to call for help. "Commander Thixtal!" he shouted. "The human has gone crazy!" The instructor turned back toward the demonstration, expecting to see a yielding human and triumphant Corvans. Instead, he saw Vashator struggling to breathe while a human held him with impossible strength. "What is happening here?" Commander Thixtal demanded, but events were moving too fast for him to control. Taimin twisted his body in a motion that should have been impossible with Krelnak holding his arm. But human flexibility, enhanced by adrenaline and desperation, allowed him to move in ways the aliens had not expected. His free elbow shot backward and connected with Krelnak's breathing apparatus. The impact was precise and devastating. Krelnak's breathing device shattered, and the alien found himself gasping for air in an atmosphere his lungs could not process efficiently. His grip on Taimin's arm loosened as he struggled with his own breathing problems. Around the training hall, the alien students were beginning to understand that something unprecedented was happening. The weak human they had been watching was somehow fighting back against 3 opponents who should have been able to crush him easily. But this was only the beginning. Taimin had 2 minutes of enhanced human capability left in his system, and he intended to use every second of it. Something fundamental changed in Taimin's brain as his vision darkened and his breathing stopped. Deep in the oldest parts of his mind, systems that had been dormant since childhood suddenly activated. His body's emergency protocols, designed by millions of years of evolution on a death world, took complete control. The Academy's medical texts described human physiology as unremarkable: average strength, moderate speed, soft skin, no natural weapons. What they failed to mention was that these measurements were taken from humans operating under normal, civilized conditions. No one had bothered to study what happened when a human's survival instincts fully activated. Taemin's adrenal glands dumped massive amounts of hormones into his bloodstream. His heart rate tripled. Blood flow to non-essential organs stopped completely, redirecting every available resource to his muscles and brain. His nervous system switched from normal operation to combat mode, where pain became distant and reaction times increased dramatically. Most importantly, the psychological limiters that kept humans from seriously hurting each other simply turned off. Taemin stopped thinking like a student following academy rules. He started thinking like an apex predator whose life was in immediate danger. Tekis. Other species in the galaxy had evolved differently. The Corvins came from a harsh world, but their solution had been to develop thick skin and powerful bodies. The Vrex had become better at tactics and coordination. The peaceful species had developed advanced technology to avoid conflict entirely. Humans had taken a different path. They had evolved the ability to become temporarily superhuman when facing mortal danger. For short periods, a human could operate far beyond their normal physical and mental limits. The cost was enormous, and humans could only sustain this state for minutes before exhaustion set in. But those minutes were enough to turn prey into predator. None of the alien students understood this. To them, humans were soft creatures who used tools and teamwork to overcome their physical limitations. They had no idea that every human carried within them the genetic memory of hunters who had chased mammoth across frozen plains and warriors, who had fought impossible battles with nothing but determination and rage. Vashator felt the change immediately. The soft, yielding human beneath him transformed into something hard and dangerous. The weak struggles stopped and were replaced by movements that were precise, controlled, and utterly without fear. "What is happening to him?" Krelnok asked, his voice filled with confusion. The answer was simple but impossible for the aliens to understand. Taemin had stopped being civilized. The Academy had taught him to follow rules, show respect, and avoid unnecessary conflict. All of that was gone now, replaced by instincts that were older than recorded history. Taemin's grip on Vashator's breathing apparatus tightened with force that should have been impossible for human muscles. But human muscles operating under extreme adrenaline were capable of feats that seemed supernatural. Mothers had been known to lift cars off trapped children. Soldiers had fought through wounds that should have been fatal. The metal breathing filter crumpled in Taemin's hand like paper. Vashator gasped as his air supply was cut off. But that was only the beginning. The human's other hand found the nerve cluster on the Corvan's neck with the precision of a medical instrument. Taemin had spent hours in xenobiology class learning about alien anatomy. The instructors had intended this knowledge to help humans provide medical aid to injured aliens. They had never considered that the same knowledge could be used to cause precise, devastating damage. The pressure point Taemin targeted was hidden beneath Vashator's thick skin, but the human knew exactly where to press and how much force to apply. The Corvin's natural armor meant nothing against an attack that bypassed physical defenses entirely. Vashator's entire body convulsed as pain shot through his nervous system. His grip on Taemin's throat loosened involuntarily as his brain struggled to process what was happening. The big alien had never experienced anything like this level of precise, calculated violence. "Impossible," he gasped through his damaged breathing apparatus. Humans are not capable of this, but humans were capable of this and much more. They had simply chosen not to demonstrate these capabilities under normal circumstances. The Academy had mistaken human restraint for human weakness, never realizing that civilized behavior was a choice, not a limitation. Krelnak still held Taemin's left arm, but his grip was weakening as he watched his friend struggle with the human's unexpected attack. He had never seen Vashator hurt before, much less controlled by a smaller opponent. "Let go of him," Krelnak demanded, trying to sound threatening despite his obvious confusion. Taemin turned his head to look at the second Corvin, and Krelnak saw something in the human's eyes that made him step back involuntarily. There was no fear there, no pain, no surrender. There was only a cold, calculating intelligence focused entirely on the destruction of anything that threatened him. In his enhanced state, Taemin processed information faster than ever before. He could see the weak points in Krelnak's stance, the exact angle needed to break the alien's grip, the most efficient way to eliminate this threat and move on to the next one. Human flexibility, already superior to most alien species, became almost supernatural under the influence of adrenaline and desperation. Taemin twisted his body in a way that bent the laws of physics, his spine rotating far beyond what the Corvins thought possible. His free elbow shot backward with the speed and precision of a striking snake. The impact hit Krelnak's breathing apparatus dead center, shattering the delicate mechanism that allowed the alien to breathe in the Academy's mixed atmosphere. Krelnak immediately let go of Taemin's arm as he clawed at his damaged breathing gear. Without the filter, the Academy's air was thin and harsh for his lungs. He could breathe, but barely, and his strength began to fade within seconds. Zefek still held Taemin's legs, but he was beginning to understand that this was no longer a safe demonstration. The human had somehow become dangerous in a way that defied everything they had been taught about human capabilities. "Commander," Zefek called to the instructor, "something is wrong with the human. He is not acting normally." "Commander." Thixtal turned back to the demonstration, his compound eyes taking in the scene instantly. Vashator was struggling to breathe while locked in the human's grip. Krelnak was gasping and backing away. The small, weak human who should have yielded minutes ago was somehow controlling the situation. "Cadet Lee Taemin," the instructor commanded, in his most authoritative voice. "Release your opponent immediately. This demonstration is over." But Taemin was no longer listening to Academy instructors or following civilized protocols. In his current state, he recognized only two categories of beings: allies who were helping him survive and enemies who needed to be eliminated. Since no one was helping him, everyone else was an enemy. The human's enhanced hearing picked up movement behind him as more aliens stepped forward to intervene. His improved peripheral vision showed him exactly where each potential threat was positioned. His tactical thinking, operating at superhuman levels, began calculating the most efficient way to deal with multiple opponents. Around the training hall, the alien students watched in growing shock as they realized the fundamental assumptions they had made about humans were completely wrong. The soft, weak creatures they had dismissed were apparently capable of violence that was both controlled and devastating. Yoon continued recording from her position on the bench, her hands no longer shaking. She was an engineering student, trained to observe and analyze. What she was seeing defied everything the Academy had taught about human limitations, and she wanted to document every second of it. The other human students stood frozen in their section, afraid to move, but unable to look away. They had never seen anything like this before. They knew Taemin as a quiet, polite person who avoided conflicts and followed rules. The person on the mat was someone completely different. Ji-woo recognized the change in his friend's behavior and felt a chill of understanding. He remembered stories from Earth's history, tales of ordinary people who had done extraordinary things when pushed beyond their limits. Those stories had always seemed like myths or exaggerations, Now he was watching one of those stories unfold in real time. Taemin's enhanced senses detected the approaching footsteps of additional aliens moving to surround him. His tactical mind calculated distances, angles, and threat levels with computer-like precision. He had approximately 90 seconds of enhanced capability remaining, and he intended to use every second efficiently. ZFX made the mistake of trying to tighten his grip on Taemin's legs. The human's response was immediate and devastating. What happened next took exactly 127 seconds. Daeun's recording device captured every moment with perfect clarity, creating a document that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. Taemin moved with inhuman speed and precision. His enhanced reflexes operated faster than alien nervous systems could process, making his actions appear almost supernatural to the watching students. Every movement was calculated for maximum efficiency and devastating. Effect, ZFX had made the mistake of trying to tighten his grip on Taemin's legs. The human's response was immediate and overwhelming. Taemin's abdominal muscles, supercharged with adrenaline, allowed him to perform a sit-up that brought his torso upright despite the alien's restraining hold. His hands shot out and grabbed ZFX by the wrists. The Corvin expected to feel the weak grip of soft human fingers, but instead found himself caught in a vice that threatened to crush his bones. Taemin's enhanced strength was operating at levels that his own Academy medical file said were impossible. "What?" ZFX began, but the word was cut off as Taemin twisted his wrists in opposite directions. The technique was simple leverage, taught in basic martial arts classes across the galaxy. But when applied with superhuman strength and perfect precision, it became something else entirely. ZFX's manipulator appendages, designed to grip tools and weapons, were not built to resist the specific type of rotational force Taemin applied. The sound of breaking cartilage echoed through the silent training hall. ZFX screamed in pain and released his hold on Taemin's legs, stumbling backward while clutching his damaged limbs to his chest. Taemin rolled to his feet with fluid grace, still maintaining his grip on Vashitor's breathing apparatus. The big Corvin found himself pulled along, unable to break free from the human's impossible hold. His claws, which should have been able to tear through human flesh, scraped harmlessly against skin that had become rigid with adrenaline. "Stop. This immediately," Commander Thixtal ordered, his forearms reaching for the emergency controls that would flood the room with sleeping gas. But Taemin was already moving toward his next objective. His enhanced vision had identified the instructor as a potential threat, and his tactical mind had calculated the exact sequence of actions needed to neutralize that threat before it could interfere. Humans did not fight like the civilized species taught at the Academy. They did not engage in formal duels with rules and protocols. When human survival instincts activated, they fought like the pack hunters they had evolved to be, targeting the most dangerous opponents first and using every available advantage. Taemin released Vashtor and sprinted toward the instructor with speed that shocked everyone present. His legs, operating under adrenaline enhancement, carried him across the training mat faster than Corvin eyes could track. To the aliens, he seemed to simply appear in front of Commander Thixtal. The Vrex instructor was tall and imposing, with 4 arms that could move independently and compound eyes that could see in multiple directions simultaneously. Under normal circumstances, he would have been more than capable of restraining a single human student, but these were not normal circumstances, and Taemin was no longer a normal human. The human's first strike targeted the instructor's primary manipulator arm, the one reaching for the emergency controls. Taemin's enhanced reflexes allowed him to move faster than the alien's nervous system could respond. His grip locked around the instructor's wrist with enough force to stop the appendage completely. Commander Thixtal tried to use his other arms to grab the human, but Taemin anticipated every movement. His free hand shot out and struck a nerve. Cluster at the base of the instructor's neck, a pressure point that humans had identified during their xenobiology studies. The big Virex staggered as his nervous system overloaded. His compound eyes went wide with shock as he realized that the small human had just demonstrated detailed knowledge of Vrex anatomy and the precise application of force needed to cause maximum disruption. "Impossible," the instructor gasped. "Human. Strength levels are documented. This cannot be happening." But it was happening, and the alien students were beginning to understand that their fundamental assumptions about human capabilities were catastrophically wrong. The medical files they had studied described baseline human performance under controlled conditions. No one had bothered to research what humans were capable of when their survival instincts fully activated. Around the training hall, more alien students moved forward to help their instructor. Their various species brought different advantages to the conflict. Some had natural armor, others had multiple limbs, a few had enhanced speed or strength. Taemin's enhanced perception tracked all of them simultaneously. His tactical thinking, operating at superhuman levels, calculated the threat each opponent represented and the most efficient order for eliminating them. He had approximately 60 seconds of enhanced capability remaining, and he intended to use every second. The first alien to reach him was a Gorlan, a peaceful species known for their diplomatic skills and non-violent nature. Under normal circumstances, Taemin would never have hurt such a gentle being, but in his current state, he recognized only enemies and obstacles. The Gorlan reached out with a restraining hold that was designed to be gentle and non-threatening. Taemin's response was anything but gentle. He grabbed the alien's extended appendage and used it as a lever to throw the Gorlan across the room with a technique that turned the alien's own momentum against him. The peaceful Gorlan hit the wall hard and slid to the floor, conscious but stunned. He had never experienced violence before and could not understand how the small human had moved so fast and struck so precisely. Two Vrex students attacked next, using their natural coordination to approach from different angles. Their compound eyes and multiple arms should have given them a significant advantage against a single opponent with limited vision and reach. Instead, they found themselves facing a human whose enhanced reflexes and tactical thinking allowed him to anticipate and counter their coordinated assault. Taemin ducked under the first Vrex's grab and struck upward at the alien's breathing apparatus. His enhanced strength crumpled the device instantly, leaving the student gasping for air. The second Vrex tried to grab Taemin from behind, but the human spun around with inhuman speed and delivered a precise strike to the alien's joint cluster. The Vrex collapsed as his locomotion system shut down from the targeted nerve impact. A group of Corvin students charged forward in formation, their thick armor and natural strength making them confident of victory. They had seen Vashator's struggles, but assumed that superior numbers would overcome whatever temporary enhancement the human was experiencing. They were wrong. Taemin did not fight them one at a time like a civilized duelist. He fought them like a pack hunter taking down larger prey, using speed and precision to attack their weak points while avoiding their strengths entirely. The first Corvin found his breathing apparatus destroyed before he could swing his massive arms. The second discovered that human knowledge of alien anatomy included detailed information about nerve clusters that could cause temporary paralysis. The third learned that human flexibility allowed for attacks from angles that Corvin physiology simply could not defend against. In less than 30 seconds, 5 alien students lay on the training mat, none permanently injured but all effectively neutralized. The remaining students backed away from the human who had somehow transformed from weak prey into an apex predator. Taemin stood in the center of the training hall, breathing hard but completely in control. His enhanced senses scanned for additional threats while his tactical mind calculated escape routes and defensive positions. Around him, the alien students stared in shock and growing fear. Vashator struggled to his feet, his breathing apparatus, damaged but still functional. His thick skin had protected him from serious injury, but his confidence was shattered. The weak human he had been tormenting had somehow become something dangerous and unpredictable. "What are you?" Vashator demanded, backing away from the human he no longer recognized. Taemin's enhanced hearing detected movement in the corridor outside the training hall. Security personnel were responding to the emergency, bringing weapons and restraint, devices designed for dangerous students. His tactical mind calculated that he had less than 20 seconds before they arrived. In those final seconds, Taemin made a decision that would be remembered throughout the galaxy. Instead of continuing to fight or attempting to escape, he chose to demonstrate one final aspect of human nature that the aliens had never considered. He chose to stop. The transformation was as dramatic as the initial awakening. Taemin's enhanced state faded as his body's emergency system shut down. His breathing slowed. His heart rate decreased. And the cold, tactical thinking was replaced by normal human consciousness. He looked around the training hall at the injured aliens and felt a moment of shock at what he had accomplished. The person, who had fought with such devastating efficiency, felt like a stranger, someone he had watched rather than been. But he had been that person, and now everyone in the academy would know what humans were truly capable of when pushed beyond their limits. The training hall fell into a silence so complete that the only sounds were the labored breathing of injured aliens and the soft hum of the academy's life support systems. Students who had been cheering and laughing minutes earlier now stood, frozen, staring at the human who had somehow transformed their understanding of reality. Taemin stood in the center of the room, no longer the superhuman predator he had been moments before. The adrenaline was fading from his system, leaving him tired and slightly confused. He looked around at the injured aliens and felt a wave of concern that would have been impossible during his enhanced state. "Is everyone okay?" he asked, his voice quiet and worried. The question shocked the alien students more than his violence had. After demonstrating such devastating fighting capability, the human was now expressing concern for the beings he had just defeated. This contradiction made no sense to minds that understood only strength or weakness, predator or prey. Vashator sat on the mat, clutching his damaged breathing apparatus and staring at Taemin with wide eyes. The big Corvan had always believed that strength was the only measure of worth and that the strongest being would naturally dominate all others. But the human had been both stronger and more merciful than him, a combination he could not understand. "What are you?" Vashator asked again, his voice filled with confusion rather than anger. Before Taemin could answer, the training hall doors burst open. Academy security personnel rushed in, their weapons drawn and ready. They wore full combat armor and carried restraint devices designed to subdue dangerous students without permanent harm. The security team stopped short when they saw the scene. They had expected to find a riot or a serious fight between multiple students. Instead, they found one small human standing calmly in a room full of injured aliens who seemed more shocked than hurt. Captain Relshaw led the security team. He was a professional soldier from a species known for their tactical expertise and calm judgment. His multiple eyes quickly assessed the situation, noting the positions of the injured students and the complete lack of weapons or obvious signs of a major disturbance. "What happened here?" Captain Relshaw demanded, his weapon trained on Taemin as the most likely source of trouble. Commander Thixtal struggled to his feet, his compound eyes still showing signs of shock. The instructor's breathing was labored, and one of his arms hung limply at his side where Taemin had struck the nerve cluster. "The human," Commander Thixtal said slowly, as if he could not believe his own words. "The human defeated multiple opponents in single combat. I do not understand how this is possible." Captain Relshaw's weapons lowered slightly. He had known humans for years and had always found them to be peaceful, cooperative beings who avoided violence whenever possible. The idea that one human had defeated multiple aliens in a fight seemed absurd. "Is this accurate?" he asked the watching students. Around the training hall, alien heads nodded in confirmation. Some students looked embarrassed, others appeared frightened, but all of them verified the instructor's account. The small, weak human had somehow overpowered opponents who should have been able to crush him easily. Yoon Da-eun stepped forward from her position on the bench, holding her recording device. As an engineering student, she understood the importance of documenting unprecedented events for future analysis. "I recorded everything," she said, offering the device to Captain Rel Shaw. "The human was defending himself. He did not start the conflict." Captain Rel Shaw accepted the device and quickly reviewed the recording. What he saw challenged everything he thought he knew about human capabilities. The small being moved with speed and precision that seemed impossible, striking with surgical accuracy at precisely the right points to neutralize each opponent. But even more impressive was how the human had stopped fighting the moment his opponents were defeated. There had been no unnecessary violence, no attempts to cause permanent harm. The human had used exactly the amount of force needed to end the threat and then immediately returned to peaceful behavior. "Medical teams to Training Hall 7, Captain," Rel Shaw called into his communication device. "Multiple injured students, non-critical casualties." While they waited for medical assistance, an unexpected voice spoke from the doorway. Lieutenant Colonel Park Hyun-sik entered the training hall with measured steps, his human military uniform immaculate despite his obvious haste to respond to the emergency. Lieutenant Colonel Park was the human liaison officer at the academy, responsible for coordinating between Earth forces and the galactic military. He was a tall man with graying hair and calm eyes that missed nothing. Most aliens respected him but considered him a diplomat rather than a warrior. "Captain Rel Shaw," Lieutenant Colonel Park said with a slight bow. "I came as soon as I heard about the incident." The alien security captain handed over Da-eun's recording device. "Your cadet was involved in a fight with multiple opponents. The preliminary evidence suggests self-defense, but the extent of his capabilities was unexpected." Lieutenant Colonel Park reviewed the recording with the practiced eye of a professional soldier. He watched Taemin's transformation from peaceful student to efficient combatant, noting the precise techniques and controlled application of force. When the recording ended, he was quiet for several long moments. "Commander Thickstall," Lieutenant Colonel Park said finally, turning to face the injured instructor. "According to this recording, you allowed a training exercise to continue after. It became clear that one student was being seriously injured. You failed to stop the assault when it moved beyond educational demonstration into actual violence." The Vrex instructor's compound eyes focused on the human officer with growing concern. "The human was clearly overmatched. I assumed he would yield appropriately." "You assumed incorrectly," Lieutenant Colonel Park replied in a voice that remained perfectly calm. "Your failure to maintain proper safety protocols resulted in multiple injuries and created a dangerous situation that could have been avoided." Captain Rel Shaw studied the human officer with new interest. There was something in Lieutenant Colonel Park's manner that suggested hidden depths, a controlled strength that was similar to what they had just witnessed from the young cadet. "Are all humans capable of this level of combat performance?" "Captain," Rel Shaw asked directly. Lieutenant Colonel Park considered the question carefully before answering. "All humans have the potential for enhanced performance under extreme stress. However, most of us prefer to resolve conflicts through peaceful means. What you witnessed today only occurs when a human perceives a genuine threat to their survival." Around the training hall, alien students absorbed this information with growing unease. They had spent months treating humans as weak creatures who needed protection. Now they were learning that humans had been choosing to appear weak, holding back capabilities that could emerge without warning. The medical teams arrived and began treating the injured aliens. None of the wounds were serious, but several students required assistance with their breathing apparatus and nerve damage. The medics worked efficiently, asking questions about what had caused such precise injuries. Vashator was among the last to be treated. As the medical technician repaired his breathing device, he continued to stare at Taemin with a mixture of fear and confusion. "I do not understand," he said to Lieutenant Colonel Park. "Why did he stop fighting? He could have hurt us much worse. He could have won completely." Lieutenant Colonel Park smiled slightly, the expression containing both warmth and warning. "Because, Cadet Vashator, true strength is knowing when not to use your full capabilities. Humans fight when necessary. But we do not fight for dominance or to prove superiority. We fight to protect ourselves and others, and we stop when the threat is neutralized." As the medical teams finished their work and began moving the injured, students to the Academy Hospital, word of the incident spread throughout the station. Within hours, every student and instructor would know that the quiet human cadets were capable of violence that was both devastating and precisely controlled. The YO. Assumptions that had guided galactic military doctrine for decades were crumbling. If humans could fight like this when threatened, what other capabilities were they hiding? What did it mean that Earth's representatives had been operating far below their actual potential? Captain Rel Shaw made his decision. "Cadet Lee Tae-min," he said formally, "you are confined to quarters pending a full investigation of this incident. However, preliminary evidence suggests you acted in self-defense within acceptable parameters." As Tae-min was escorted from the training hall, he passed by the alien students who had watched his transformation. Some looked at him with fear, others with new respect. All of them understood that their relationship with humanity had changed forever. The age of underestimating humans was over. The Academy Medical Bay was unusually quiet the next morning. Normally, the facility treated routine injuries from training exercises and the occasional accident. Today, it housed 3 Corvin students and several others who were learning uncomfortable truths about their place in the galactic hierarchy. Vashtor lay on a medical bed designed for his large frame, breathing through a temporary apparatus while technicians repaired his damaged equipment. His thick skin showed no external injuries, but his pride was shattered beyond repair. The Corvin who had built his identity around physical dominance now understood that strength came in forms he had never imagined. "The human could have killed me," he said quietly to Krelnak, who occupied the next bed. "I felt his grip on my throat. He chose to let me live." Krelnak's manipulator appendages were wrapped in medical devices that helped his damaged joints heal properly. The smaller Corvin had always followed Vashator's lead, believing that his friend's size and aggression would protect them both from any consequences of their actions. "I don't understand," Krelnak replied. "If humans are this dangerous, why do they act so weak? Why do they let us insult them and push them around?" Zephex answered from his position on a specialized bed that supported his injured spine. The smartest of the 3 Corvins was beginning to grasp implications that his friends could not see. "Because they choose to," Zephex said slowly. "We thought their restraint was weakness, but it was actually control. They have been holding back their true nature this entire time." The medical bay's main screen displayed recordings of the previous day's incident, which had been reviewed by Academy officials throughout the night. The footage showed Taiman's transformation from peaceful student to efficient combatant with devastating clarity. Dr. Yelnara, the Academy's chief medical officer, studied the recordings with professional interest. She was a Zephyrian who specialized in comparative physiology, and the human's performance had challenged everything she thought she knew about Earth's species. The strength levels displayed are 3 to 4 times baseline human performance, she explained to a group of junior medical staff. The reaction time improvements are even more dramatic. Most remarkably, all of these enhancements appear to be natural biological responses rather than technological augmentation. Her audience of alien medical students listened with rapt attention. They had spent years studying human anatomy and had been taught that Earth's species was physically unremarkable. The revelation that humans possessed hidden capabilities was forcing them to reconsider their entire understanding of biology. "How is this possible?" asked one student, a young Vrex who had specialized in human medicine. "Humans evolved on what they call a death world. Dr. Yelnara explained. Their planet required survival capabilities that most civilized species eliminated long ago. Under extreme stress, their bodies can temporarily access reserves that would be lethal to other species. Meanwhile, in the Academy's administrative section, a very different conversation was taking place. Admiral Torval, the station commander, reviewed incident reports with growing concern. The Corvin was old enough to remember the early days of human integration into galactic society when Earth's species had been dismissed as useful but harmless. This changes our entire assessment of human military potential, Admiral Torval said to his staff. If one untrained cadet can defeat multiple opponents, what are their actual soldiers capable of? Lieutenant Colonel Park sat across from the Admiral, maintaining his calm demeanor despite the implications of the question. As Earth's military representative, he had always been careful to downplay human capabilities while ensuring his people received fair treatment. Admiral, Lieutenant Colonel Park said carefully, I think it's important to understand that what you witnessed yesterday only occurs under specific circumstances. Humans do not fight like that under normal conditions. But they can fight like that when necessary, Admiral Torval observed. This suggests that human restraint in previous conflicts was a choice rather than a limitation. Lieutenant Colonel Park nodded slowly. Earth's military doctrine has always emphasized de-escalation and proportional response. We prefer to resolve conflicts through diplomacy, but we maintain the capability to defend ourselves and our allies when peaceful solutions fail. The Admiral's compound eyes studied the human officer with new respect. How many other capabilities have humans been concealing? We haven't been concealing anything, Lieutenant Colonel Park replied. We simply haven't seen the need to demonstrate our full potential. Yesterday's incident occurred because Academy protocols failed to protect one of our cadets. Taemin responded appropriately to a genuine threat. In another part of the Academy, news of the incident spread through student quarters with remarkable speed. Alien students who had dismissed humans as weak support personnel now viewed their human classmates with mixtures of fear, respect, and curiosity. Jiwoo found himself surrounded by questions from alien students who had never bothered to speak with humans before. They wanted to know if all humans could fight like Taemin, whether Earth's military was hiding other capabilities, and what it meant for the future of galactic relations. Taemin is not special, Jiwoo explained patiently. Any human can access enhanced capabilities under the right circumstances. But we are taught from childhood to use these abilities only when absolutely necessary. A young Gorlan student, still shaken from witnessing violence for the first time, asked the question that was troubling many aliens. If humans are this dangerous, how can we trust them? Jiwoo considered the question seriously before answering. Because humans choose to be trustworthy. We could dominate through fear and violence, but we prefer to build relationships based on mutual respect and cooperation. What you saw yesterday was not aggression. It was self-defense. The Gorlan student nodded slowly, beginning to understand the distinction. So humans are dangerous, but only to those who threaten them. Exactly, Jiwoo confirmed. We believe in peace through strength. Our capabilities serve as deterrents, not as tools for conquest. 6 months later, the Galactic Defense Academy held its graduation ceremony in the main assembly hall. The massive chamber was filled with students, instructors, and family members from across the galaxy. Representatives from hundreds of worlds had come to witness the commissioning of new officers who would serve in the Galactic Defense Forces. Taemin stood with his graduating class, wearing the crisp uniform of a newly commissioned ensign. The HFY investigation into the training hall incident had concluded weeks ago, finding that he had acted in legitimate self-defense against multiple attackers. More importantly, his restraint in ending the conflict without causing permanent harm had been noted as exemplary conduct. The ceremony proceeded according to ancient traditions, with each graduating cadet receiving their commission from Admiral Torval. When Taemin's name was called, he walked across the stage with quiet dignity, accepting his rank insignia and assignment orders. "Ensign Lee Taemin," Admiral Torval announced to the assembled crowd, "recipient of the Academy Excellence Award for Outstanding Performance in Combat Training and Ethical Conduct." The applause that followed was different from the polite recognition given to other graduates. Alien students and instructors who had witnessed the transformation of their understanding about human capabilities showed genuine respect for the young officer who had changed their perceptions forever. Vashator was among those applauding. The big Corvin had graduated with his class, but his attitude toward humans had undergone a complete transformation. He now served as an advocate for human integration into frontline combat units, arguing that any military force would benefit from including Earth's warriors. After the ceremony, Taemin found himself assigned to the GSS Harmony, a multi-species cruiser that patrolled the Outer Rim territories. The ship's crew included representatives from dozens of different worlds, all working together to maintain peace and security in the galaxy's frontier regions. Captain Velnira was a veteran Zephyrian who had commanded mixed-species crews for over 20 years. She had specifically requested human officers for her ship after reviewing reports from the Academy about their unique capabilities and ethical standards. "Welcome aboard, Ensign Lee," Captain Velnira said as Taemin reported, for duty. "I understand you made quite an impression at the Academy." "I hope my service here will be more peaceful, Captain," Taemin replied with a slight smile. "I'm sure it will be," the captain agreed. "But it's good to know that if trouble finds us, we have officers who can handle themselves appropriately." As Taemin settled into his duties aboard the Harmony, he found that his reputation had preceded him. The alien crew members treated him with a respect that went beyond normal military courtesy. They understood that beneath his calm professional demeanor lay capabilities that could emerge if circumstances required them. More importantly, they understood that those capabilities were controlled by a moral code that valued life and sought peaceful solutions whenever possible. The human concept of speak softly and carry a big stick had found new meaning among the stars.